And welcome into another edition of Another Carolina Podcast. I'm Wes Mitchell. He is Chris Clark, coming at you live from the 107.5 The Game studios. And normally you would hear the voice of Pearson Fowler here, but Pearson got some other stuff to handle today, I guess you'd say. So Chris and I are going solo, trying not to burn the place down. We've got a lot of buttons and sliders in front of us, Chris. At least two mouses. Are they mouses or mice when they're...
Mice.
They're mice?
Yep.
Even when it's not the animal?
Not an animal. Yeah, it's mice.
Okay. You sound confident in that, so I'm going to go with it. About 3 monitors, a lot of other equipment. So we're going to do our best here. But, glad to be back. We're going to try to do these every single week. Recording on Friday this week, and normally it's just going to depend on our schedules and what's going on in Gamecock Nation. Of course, Chris, National Signing Day Part 2 coming up on Wednesday, and, you know, it's been a little bit different the last 2 years now that you have the early signing period, not the just complete nonstop chaos in Part 2 that you often had in the past or that you had for Part 1, but still a chance for South Carolina to get better. Obviously, they already have a commitment since the early signing period in Shiloh Sanders, who will sign on Wednesday, and looking at closing in on two other guys, namely Jaquez Sorrells, who is the 4-star defensive tackle from Winter Park, Florida, and Chris Jamie Robinson from Lee County in Georgia. And we now know that we now have times for those commitment ceremonies. Sorrells going to be at 1:30, he tweeted on Friday, and Jamie Robinson going to be at 2 o'clock, both on Wednesday, National Signing Day. And Chris, these are two recruitments that have gone a long time, especially Jamie Robinson's, but look to be coming to a close. And it seems like the Gamecocks are in pretty good shape here.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about it, Wes, is at one point it looked like both of those guys could have made earlier decisions. I remember covering Jamie. We've covered him for a long time, and it looked at one point like, there may be a spring or a summer decision, and it sort of got pushed back, and then it looked like, hey, he considered signing in December and pushed that back as well. But I think he's finally tired of it, which is good because it's time to put pen to paper. But, yeah, I think South Carolina's got the long-standing relationships there. They've been on him the longest. There's a trust there. He's been to campus too many times to count, really. And so I think Carolina's in good shape too. With Sorrells, he was a guy that, August, I believe, he was going to make a decision then as well, and ended up pushing that back, wanted to go take some more visits. But South Carolina's had him on campus a few times this year, had him on campus for an official visit as well, went to Penn State last weekend. Alabama's going to be his final trip before signing day. And certainly that does give a little bit of an element of uncertainty, I think. I don't think it's a done deal or anything of that nature, but I think South Carolina is in the best shape there too, and just have to try to hang on and ride the wave until signing day on Wednesday.
Yeah, I remember with Sorrells, I think we being you and me as far as covering the class this past summer, are probably focused on a number of other guys, potentially at defense on the defensive line. And then, I think we got word, hey, this Sorrells kid is at camp. And, 4-star guy sort of popped up out of nowhere and I think had a great time there. Then maybe was back on campus at some point, and then obviously took his official visit earlier this year. I think a kid, you look at the offers like you're talking about, Alabama, going to bring him in this weekend, it appears. Penn State brought him in last weekend. I watched him at least on TV in the Under Armour All-American game, watching the film. To me, this kid, first of all, he's a 4-star everywhere, and he looked good in the game. And to me, he looks like a true defensive tackle. They've had a number of guys they've brought in that, are kind of swing guys, can play outside, can play inside, 3 technique, or even play outside when they go to a 3-man front and stuff like this. But looking at Sorrells, I should say, he is he's still athletic for his size, but this is a true defensive tackle inside, 0 or 1 technique type player, I think, that South Carolina could land.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of versatility to him as well. And remember at one point, Wes, he was listed at 250, 260 pounds in the Rivals database, and he put on a good bit of weight. I mean, we saw him in good weight. We saw him in the summer, as you mentioned, and he was a guy that looked, 280, 290, and he's in that 290, 295 range now, I believe. So he's got the size that you look for. Very quick, athletic player. I think he can be a disruptor, give you some interior pass rush, and so certainly a player that, as South Carolina continues to retool that defensive line and build some depth and change the body types up front, I think he's just another piece to that puzzle that would be a really big get for them.
Let's talk about Jamie, ranked number 24 safety in the country on Rivals, number 28 overall prospect in the state of Georgia. He is a 5.8 4-star in the Rivals system. And, I think Auburn, Kentucky, South Carolina, Tennessee are the official Final Four. I think that makes – if you look at how his recruitment sort of played out, I think for the longest time we knew South Carolina was going to be a finalist. We knew – Kentucky was probably going to be a finalist. Tennessee probably going to be a finalist. Auburn sort of came in a little bit late. For the longest time it was sort of South Carolina and Georgia. I think you look back maybe, 6 months ago as far as how it was playing out. Those were the two schools you heard the most. But no surprise that those are the Final Four. And, just based on how it's all played out, I think – almost all signs do sort of point to South Carolina here. I think with Sorrells, like you said, you still have a little bit of pause. You have to see how that visit goes this weekend to Alabama. He was at Penn State last week. But with Jamie Robinson, I think it'd be a major shock if the Gamecocks don't land him.
Yeah, long-standing relationships, been recruiting him, seems like forever. And that's how the recruiting cycle is. You do see some guys pop up late or see staff circle back to some guys or some prospects circle back with some late interest for a variety of reasons, but he's one that they've been consistently on for a long time. I remember the first time we saw him at Camp Wes, probably a couple summers ago.
Yeah, and
a guy that turned in a really good performance. So he can do a lot of things for you. He's got corner coverage ability. South Carolina likes him as a safety or a nickel, and he's a guy that has some physicality to him. He's not the tallest guy, but he's put together pretty well. He plays physically, plays pretty recklessly, sort of fits in with what they like to do. So being that he has those coverage skills, he can go back there and play safety for you. He can go match up with guys in the slot at nickel. He can play corner if need be. And then as well, I think he brings some value on special teams as a returner or just a guy who can go play on your coverage units.
Yeah, I remember us watching him. That would have been maybe as like a rising junior. Yep. I think. And, I was sitting there thinking, this guy is one of the better cover corners that we've seen in camp at the time. Now I think he's gotten a little bit bigger since then, gotten thicker, and like you said, he's a safety nickel type for South Carolina. But I remember thinking, with some of their depth issues in the secondary at the time, I was like, this kid could maybe help South Carolina this year, as a junior, rising junior in high school. But, if it comes through for them, it'll be a big pickup. Speaking of big pickup, South Carolina with a commitment earlier this week from William Rogers, and he, of course, will sign with South Carolina on Wednesday. But, I think when Muschamp talked at the early signing day press conference, he talked about some of the needs that they had for this class. And I think we all knew defensive back was going to be a big deal, but they've talked about possibly wanting to bring in another offensive lineman. That's something we sort of tracked for a while there, and they did ultimately decide to use one of those spots on an offensive lineman, get William Rogers out of Hampton, Georgia, Lovejoy High School, and, I think just continues the process of Eric Wolford. They're going to take numbers on the offensive line. That's their philosophy, I think. They're going to take kids that have athleticism, that can move, and he's a 3-star kid on Rivals. But again, I think Eric Wolford has also he's got credibility as an evaluator and developer. And from what you picked up, Chris, this is a kid that the staff seems pretty high on.
Yeah, and you're right, Wes. Offensive line, very difficult position to evaluate. If you just go back and look at the data. You look at a lot of the guys who play in the NFL, who are drafted high in the NFL, they're not all 5-star guys who had 40 offers and were 6'5", 305 coming out of high school. It's actually sort of the opposite. But Wolford has a really good track record. He's a guy that's been in the NFL His one full class at South Carolina the first time around was a really good one. When you're talking about what 3 of the guys in that class made the NFL, that's a pretty good hit rate. 3 out of 5 or 6. So you're going to look at that position if you're doing things right to take several in every class if you got the numbers, because you're probably not going to hit all of them. If you do, then you really got something. But typically, you're not going to hit all of them. It's a very, very developmental position, and so Rogers is. Look, it's a guy. I think a lot of people got the impression that this was some extreme reach. Number one, South Carolina didn't have to take another offensive lineman in this class. They had 4. They could have gone DB. They could have just taken best available player, which was sort of the situation. But, they really like Rogers, the guy they had in camp over the summer. He played both ways for Lovejoy, has good defensive line film, good offensive line film. Slimmed down a little bit to play his senior season, played at, I think, about 305 pounds, 310, something like that. And is a guy that can move people and move around. So he's one of those guys that Wolford likes. And for whatever reason, he didn't have a ton of offers. And down the stretch, he elected to prolong his recruitment. And so maybe he didn't have as many options down the stretch. But South Carolina was really one that he wanted, and he got it.
Let's talk a bit about 2020. That's been the biggest, I guess, change. And it's been coming for a long time. But, Chris, this 2020 class is well underway for South Carolina. 4 commitments, but I think you can already start to see the potential foundation of this class coming into focus because they've had so many kids on campus. Here we are recording on February 1, the month of January. It was just, kid after kid after kid coming in, and many of their top targets seeing the football ops building, taking in their junior days. And, this past weekend was no different. This coming weekend will be no different. But several, and this obviously is not the full list of guys that were on campus, but several of their top targets that I think you can very easily say they made moves with, and in some cases put themselves in the best position with. And, I sort of jotted down some guys that I think they probably feel decent about after this weekend. And I think for me, as far as needs and guys they really, really want and guys they've targeted for a long time, Tank Bigsby, the high 4-star running back out of Georgia, has been a huge target, a want, a need for some time. And for them to get him back on campus, I know you talked to him earlier this week, Chris, but the thing that caught my eye is, okay, he was on campus late in the season for an overnight visit. He was on campus this past weekend for an overnight visit, and I believe is already talking about possibly coming back what is now this month in February. And I think you have to consider that to be a very good sign for South Carolina, and the feedback from that visit has been extremely positive.
Yeah, I mean, Tank himself, we interviewed him afterwards. He raved about it. We talked to a lot of people sort of familiar with how that recruitment was going, and a lot of buzz going into the visit for South Carolina in terms of the chances, and I think the Gamecocks only helped their cause there. I was always a little bit skeptical that he could maybe in the process early, as in last time he visited, simply because he's a guy that has been narrowing his list behind the scenes to 7. He's really down to 5 now that he may release sometime soon, but just hasn't even done that yet. So I was sort of curious, hey, is he going to take some more visits? He's going to go a little bit longer. But there's no doubt he's going to be committed by July. I think it'll probably be earlier. All indications are if things continue progressing. And South Carolina's got a really good shot. I mean, Bobby Bentley did a really good job laying the groundwork, laying the foundation there, had Carolina in pretty good shape, I think. And then Thomas Brown, new running backs coach, has taken over the recruitment and really hit the ground running, done a good job there as well.
And I think you make a good point. The fact of the matter is that Thomas Brown, especially if South Carolina lands him, is going to get a ton of credit, and rightfully so. You look at the guys that Brown has had rolling through campus in basically his first month on the job. It's very, very impressive. So I'm not in any way trying to take away from that at all, but I think it is important to remember the job that Bentley has done with Tank, with his family, leading into where things are now to put South Carolina in the position where he has that comfort level there. And, they've been working this kid really, really hard for a long time. So Brown is certainly going to help, but it's really been a team effort, I think, for South Carolina, with Muschamp heavily involved, with almost all their top targets as well. So I think that is an excellent point. A kid that's sort of the opposite in Desmond Tisdale a little bit, in that it's a newer offer for South Carolina, but they also, I think, position themselves very, very well for this weekend. Kid out of Rochelle, Georgia, Wilcox County High. But I went ahead and put in my forecast prediction for South Carolina. That may have potentially been a bit premature looking at how things are going the rest of this week, because Tisdale himself, after the visit, was talking about, hey, a commitment could come in the next couple of weeks. And I think South Carolina was in an outstanding position. They got in on him early. But now you look, Chris, and I think we knew this was going to happen. You watch the film of Desmond Tisdale, and you're like, this is a big-time player. Does not match his offer list, or really his ranking did not match the film yet, but we're starting to see that. Auburn coming in this week for an offer. Purdue offered him. Florida offered him. And I think many, many more to come for Desmond Tisdale. But that's going to be a very interesting recruitment to see play out. And I think you watch the film, though, dude, it's just this kid's a great fit for South Carolina. He's hard-nosed. He plays multiple positions. Really a pretty good running back as well. He's actually listed as a running back on Rivals, but to me is a hard-hitting linebacker type for South Carolina in their scheme, but could help you on special teams, covering kicks and punts as well. And I think, for me, this kid quickly became a guy that I could see being a priority for South Carolina.
Yeah, he really fits everything, like you said. He could play multiple linebacker positions. He moves extremely well, plays running backs. He's got really adequate, very good athleticism, no doubt about it. The shocker, the biggest upset for me of the week, Wes, is Tennessee. I don't think is offered yet.
Yeah,
and I'm shocked by that.
Well, I believe I made a bet on the board that Tennessee would have offered within the next week. So I think I'm about halfway there from when I said that. That if we were putting Vegas odds on that, I would have said that was a pretty safe bet.
Oh, no, there's no doubt about it. You remember last year we went to Carolina's camp and we're joking with some people there that it was like the Tennessee-Michigan satellite camp, even though none of their coaches were there.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. Hopefully no Michigan or Tennessee fans are listening. They're going to be a little upset with us.
Well, they're already on Rob Gregory, our buddy who does videos for the site. So
that's right.
If they happen, first of all, if you're listening, thanks for listening, Tennessee fans. But if they're on us, they come at you vicious. But
they do.
But yeah, they really, especially defensive guys, Tennessee does. It's too much to be a coincidence, I think. They very clearly pay attention to who South Carolina and Muschamp and those guys offer on the defensive side. And Tisdale, another example of a kid that South Carolina's in on early and has been able to sort of make a little bit of a move with, and now you're seeing the offer list starting to blow up. Let's see. Let's get through some of these guys. Don Chaney, running back. I think for most of the process, Chris, you're way closer to this one than me. Was Miami not sort of like considered to be a bit of the favorite before Thomas Brown gets the South Carolina job? They get him on campus, and some South Carolina connections here as well.
Yeah, a Miami kid, and the hometown school, Miami, Thomas Brown. Thomas Brown's he did a great job getting in early with Chaney and his father, who, as you alluded to, played college football at South Carolina. He was a teammate of Steve Tannehill. He was on the 1992 team, I believe. And so it was only natural that, Bobby Bentley was a guy that, had given Chaney a look, of course. But once Thomas Brown got to South Carolina, it's sort of a natural course of action that he was going to, really sort of make a play for him. And the relationships there are great. It didn't take long to get him on campus. Had a really, really good trip. We talked to him, had a recap interview on Gamecock Central. He really raved about the visit. Has a great relationship with Brown. Chaney said that, having Brown on campus was going to help South Carolina's chances with him. His father got to get back on campus, too, and sort of see what things look like in Columbia now, reconnect with some people. He connected with Tannehill while he was in Columbia. So I think it went pretty well for Carolina, and I think right now, if you had to handicap it, I think Carolina's in a decent spot for Chaney as well.
And again, like we've said many, many times, landing a big-time back or landing two big-time backs, if fate would have it, I think a big priority for South Carolina in this class. Let's see. Let's talk about Zevion Capers a little bit because I think this is a kid to keep an eye on moving forward. South Carolina really, I think, made a big move with him this weekend as he was on campus. And for the longest time, a Clemson lean. And I think a situation where South Carolina is going to benefit from Clemson casting a little bit more of a national net. And, this is a kid that, and don't mistake it, he's had an offer from Clemson. He was a priority for Clemson and did not, pull the trigger on an early commitment to Clemson. And that could play in South Carolina's favor. Named the Gamecocks as his leader. And I think sounds like actually could be closing in on a potential early commitment, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, Capers is a guy that he's always had South Carolina under consideration, the top 3, top 4, top 5. But the stars have just sort of aligned over time. And this happens in recruiting to where, you just end up with having a good shot at a guy. I mean, Clemson was a school that he liked a lot. But the mutual interest has sort of diminished there. And then South Carolina's always sort of hung around, and they got him to campus for a junior day visit, offered him last summer at camp after he put on a good performance there. I remember watching him in camp last summer, and things have just continued to progress. And now it's a deal where I think he's going to Auburn this weekend. And, again, another early commitment candidate. And we could be, Wes, seeing a situation where it depends on how things break, but I think South Carolina could have another nice little chunk of the class in place, potentially, if things go well this spring, this summer.
Yeah, I think there's no question. And they have sort of shown – they adjusted, I think, to this early stuff pretty quickly. And the reason I say that is the spring official visits. I think you look at some schools have sort of still saved their official visits in some cases, and some schools have said, hey, we're going to go ahead and bring these kids in and try to close them down. I think you look at the last class, the number of guys that went ahead and took early officials to South Carolina was a pretty high number, and I think we'll probably see some of that just based on the push to get these guys on campus in January for unofficials. I think we will continue to see that moving forward, especially for the guys that are just sort of already into, the middle to later stages of their recruiting processes and already have a bunch of offers and already have taken a bunch of visits. Some guys are in the Desmond Tisdale category where they're sort of just blowing up, whereas Capers is a kid that's had offers for a long time to be a 2020 kid. So he's already taken a bunch of visits. He's already seen a bunch of schools. And for a lot of those guys, it gets exhausting. I mean, it can wear them down. So it seems that a lot of them are ready to just get it over with, and South Carolina is more than happy to go ahead and take his commitment, I think. Let's move it forward to this coming weekend, more 2020s and 2021s on campus. I know, Chris, you had a list there posted on Gamecock Central. By the way, shameless plug, if you're listening to this and you're not a subscriber, we want you to subscribe. So go check us out on Gamecock Central. We'll have complete coverage this weekend of South Carolina's third junior day in a row. And we got some big news. Adam Friedman delivering in that DeMatha High School. 5-star running back Marshawn Lloyd will be on campus this Saturday. DeMatha is in Hyattsville, Maryland. And watch some film on this kid, Chris, a dynamic football player. He's a 5-star kid, like I said. And, again, this one goes back to Thomas Brown. Basically, he said, not very familiar with South Carolina, but Thomas Brown gets the job. Thomas Brown already had him interested in Miami, and he's going to give the Gamecocks a shot. And you would have to pretty much, I think, categorize him as a long shot right now. But at the same time, I think we've learned anytime they get these kids on campus, a lot of times the more national-type kids are, even if South Carolina doesn't land them, they're, generally genuinely blown away because they don't expect for South Carolina to have the facilities that they do. And now we're seeing, obviously with the football ops building, I think the indoor is still one of the nicer ones in the country. The dorm situation at South Carolina, a lot of these out-of-state kids, to me, Chris, are sometimes actually surprised at what South Carolina has to offer them.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about, getting guys on campus. And certainly for a running back, South Carolina's got a really good situation in terms of recruiting to sell. You got a new running backs coach in Thomas Brown who has a good pedigree. The competition, I mean, it's even if they returned, everybody would be wide open, but it's certainly wide open because of the guys that they're losing. And that's why you can go out and sell to one or two backs in this class, really quality backs. The opportunity for playing time is pretty obvious. To go play college football in the SEC and maybe go split carries with another big-time guy. And then again, like you said, the facilities are as good as they've ever been at South Carolina and would rival really anywhere in the country right now. So they have some momentum in that regard, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what Lloyd thinks when he leaves. Now, like you said, Wes, a little bit of a longer shot right now. Have to see how things go. They can make a move. I think, right now, places he's been, Georgia, Clemson, Penn State, those stand out a little bit more. The one I think will be interesting to watch is Maryland as time goes on. Mm-hmm. He's a Maryland kid, being from DeMatha High. Their head coach, Elijah Brooks, got hired to Mike Locksley's staff to coach running backs. So I certainly think that's going to be a storyline to watch here in the future. And I think Maryland will eventually make an ascension. I'm not saying they'll definitely get the kid, but they'll be in that mix before all is said and done.
And for those listening, you are allowed to do that because he's the running backs coach. Yep. There are NCAA limitations in place where they couldn't have hired him to be a, quote, off-the-field coach, within a certain period of time. But because he's a true on-the-field assistant coach, they can bring him in and still recruit the five-star back or anybody that coach was involved with. And it is really another impressive list, Chris. I'm looking at it now. A guy I'm very intrigued by as far as the wide receiver board goes, and if South Carolina can make a move here, is Justin Robinson from McDonough, Georgia. I think a kid that's sort of blown up lately as a future four-star guy. Jari Patterson, who is actually from Rico Daddle's high school and, was friends with him. That'll be an interesting visit there. Miles Murphy, a big-time defensive end prospect from the state of North Carolina that will get his look at the program, and several offensive line guys that could potentially be on campus as well. I think you look at the last 3 weekends, you've seen a manageable number of prospects brought in each weekend, but also some big names, and Chris, this one is no different. Is there anybody on this list? And we've got the full list on the Insider Forum if you want to check it out on Gamecock Central. Is there anybody or a couple of guys on this list you're most intrigued by seeing how this weekend goes?
There are a few guys that would fall into that category. I think, Miles Murphy is one, 4-star defensive lineman out of North Carolina is certainly one. DeMarcus Beckwith, who's an athlete out of Alabama who's really gaining some traction and is just an incredible athlete who could do a lot of different things for you. So he's one. Robinson, like you mentioned. Broderick Jones, who's a Georgia offensive lineman commitment from Georgia, is on campus, which has sort of been playing for a little while. So that's another one. I think, and aside from Lloyd, there are others as well that are intriguing, but those really stand out as guys that I think, South Carolina can make a big move with, or just temperature check, sort of see if there's long-term staying power, mutual interest on both sides.
Yeah, and a couple of in-state guys or a few in-state guys that maybe we haven't talked about a ton as far as South Carolina is concerned, but the DB out of Malden and Andrew Phillips is expected in, and then the twins out of Blythewood, Joshua Burrell and Jordan Burrell, and some guys coming in from the 2021 class from North Carolina, from Hunter Huss, from Winston-Salem Prep. So, like I said, it's a nice list, and even a 2022 guy on there as well, which that makes me feel pretty old.
Very, very old. Yep.
I don't even think I'm that old, but that will make you feel old that they're recruiting someone from the 2022 class. So it'll be another interesting weekend, and we'll have plenty on that on Gamecock Central throughout Saturday and then Sunday, of course. And hopefully we will have all of our interviews done before the Super Bowl on Sunday. And if we're going to do a football show, I know we've been football recruiting focused, but we got to talk about the Super Bowl. Patriots, Rams, 6:30, CBS. What are you most? Are you excited? First of all, are you excited for the Super Bowl, Chris? Do you get excited for the Super Bowl, or is it more to me? I'll be honest. The Super Bowl each year, unless my team is in it, which I know we both pull for the Panthers. They were not a contender this year, obviously. I almost, and as a football fan, it might be weird for me to say this, but I get more excited about the spectacle of the whole thing, just as excited, I should say, as I do about the actual game. I mean, I'm going to watch the game. I'm going to watch every play, but the Super Bowl is more of a social viewing experience in America, I feel like, than just a football game. So yeah, it'll be exciting, but I'm just excited for the food I'm going to eat, for the commercials we'll be talking about, and for the potentially bad calls that will be talked about as they have been after every playoff game. What about you?
Yeah, I'm hoping there's just no really egregiously bad calls to overshadow everything. I do. I enjoyed the spectacle of it and the fellowship with friends. Going to be eating some good food, I'm sure. All that is cool. But no, I really am looking forward to. Actually, I'm looking forward to this game a little bit more than I have the past few. I don't know why. I think just Belichick versus McVay, that whole deal. Just seeing if the Patriots can get it done again. Be hard to bet against them, honestly, just with their pedigree and what they've done in big game situations. But I'm really intrigued by Sean McVay and the Rams, Jared Goff, Aaron Donald, all those guys. Really looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, it should be fun. And I got to say, dude, I'm a Tony Romo fan on the call.
Oh, yeah, big time.
I saw somebody put it together. I can't remember. I would give credit, but I can't remember who did it. But they were talking about the percentage that Tony Romo has been correct in his play calling, basically, from the booth. And I think it was 68% this year that he called the play correctly before it was run. And, I think he's done a great job. You look last week, he does a good job viewing the game from a quarterback's lens and then passing it on to us from a broadcast perspective. And, now, if he could call the Patriots plays, surely the Chiefs knew what was coming as well 2 weeks ago, but just obviously couldn't stop it, I think. But yeah, Tony has been great. I've loved listening to him, and I think he's gotten better each week. And you know what? You have some Gamecock connections to this game as well. Stephon Gilmore, obviously playing for the Patriots, and Joey Blake, former Gamecock nutritionist, is the nutritionist for Sean McVay in St. Louis. So you got a Gamecock on each side of this thing this weekend that'll be trying to get a ring. And obviously it'd be a little bittersweet, but, I mean, Pharaoh Cooper, if the Rams win, he gets a ring as well, right? Isn't that how it works? He does. We're saying yes, he does.
Sure.
If you're involved with the team, if you play on the team that year, you get a ring. So, Pharaoh spent a good portion of the year with the Rams before he was let go. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm curious to see what can Sean McVay come up with a full 2 weeks, because this guy is he's the hottest thing in coaching right now. Every other franchise is trying to find the next Sean McVay and copy the whole offensive guru approach to winning. But I mean, this guy's special. There are very few Sean McVays out there, and I'm curious to see the veteran in Belichick, obviously, against the new guy in Sean McVay. I got a feeling both sides are going to have something up their sleeve for the other.
Yeah, and I love the Sean McVay. Everybody trying to pull off the Sean McVay tree, and I love the jokes. Like, I shook hands with Sean McVay. I'm getting an interview for a head coaching job now. It's really awesome. But yeah, I mean, in a way, it's like, is there like a torch passing? I mean, it doesn't look like Belichick's done or anything, but if McVay can win this one, and then the Rams can go on to win, a couple more at some point.
Yeah.
He's a hot coach right now, no doubt about it, but this could really be a big step towards solidifying that status.
Yeah, and, all the talk 2 weeks ago was about the passing of the torch from Brady to Patrick Mahomes, and Brady had other things in mind. So, So we'll see if that's the case on Saturday. But okay, so Maroon 5 halftime show. Are you for that or against that?
I haven't even thought about it. I think I'm against the newer version of Maroon 5.
Yeah.
They've gone a little bit too commercialized.
Yeah.
For me. Have I told? I might have told you this story.
I love a good story.
Just talking, but I have a Maroon 5 story out of all random things.
Really?
But yes. Okay. So I'm at an Incubus concert. I think my senior year of high school in Charlotte. It was called the Cricket Arena then. $25 for an Incubus concert. It used to be like my favorite band in high school. And so we're standing outside the arena in line, waiting to get in, and these people come by, handing out these demo CDs, like four. It's an actual CD, but like 4 tracks on it, 6 tracks. They're handing them out. Hey guys, check out this new band. It was Maroon 5. And so, I mean, nobody had ever heard of them. They were completely, just off the radar. But yeah. I still have that CD somewhere. Maybe have it back home. And it's not in my pocket. We won't play it or anything like that. I'll give it to Pearson. He can use it for bumper music.
So you knew of Maroon 5 before they
I did. And, then they cool. Eventually resurfaced, or they actually surfaced, like, I guess like a couple years later. And I was like, man, that's that band. So I don't know. And now they're like one of the biggest bands in the world. So I just thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, now they are the Super Bowl halftime show, which has been heavily scrutinized, I believe. But you can't please every. It doesn't matter who you pick. You're not going to please everybody with your Super Bowl halftime decision.
Who was where did Imagine Dragons play recently? Was that
That was a college football championship.
Dude, let me say, I mean, I wanted to go see them when they came to Columbia and didn't get to do it.
I like Imagine Dragons.
They were brutal, though.
Yeah, they were, but I like
their music.
Dude, they're being, I don't know, maybe we are just old, man. They're being compared on Twitter to, like, Nickelback, and, like, they're in that stage of their career now where people are just, hate them. I don't know, man. I like Imagine Dragons. I listen, like, I feel like they have good workout music, too. Like
they do. It's a good workout, and
their songs do all sound the same.
They do, but they're entertaining, Yes. I think I wouldn't go Nickelback. I wouldn't go that
that's
far.
Harsh, right?
Well, Nickelback, like Nickelback's first CD was actually a really good CD, and then they just lost it. They just went over the top, commercialized and everything. And their lead singer admitted it. But yeah, they were so bad in that performance, it really sort of turned me off a little bit. Yeah, I mean, if people can't perform live, it always turns me off a little bit.
Yeah, and once the thing about that stuff is, though, once socially people have decided they're against you, it's hard to come back. Like,
that's true.
When everybody just sort of, when it becomes cool to hate on a band,
But they'll still sell a lot of records, right? Even with like Nickelback does.
Yeah. I'm about to get tweets.
Oh, wait a minute.
I like some Nickelback songs.
Oh, boy.
I couldn't name them for you. You said you liked their old stuff, too.
Old stuff. That was when I was, like, in high school.
Yeah, I mean,
that was an album that, like, nobody, I can't even remember the name of it. I don't think anybody could even name it.
Yeah.
And they had one song called Leader of Men, I think, that was like a sort of pseudo hit from that album.
Yeah. I think I know that song.
That was a good song.
Anyway, we are drifting off course here. But I guess we should wrap it up. But before we talk to y'all again, we may do a show maybe Monday or Tuesday leading into signing day, depending on what our buddy Pearson is up to as well. But if not, we'll have complete coverage on Wednesday for National Signing Day, and we'll have complete coverage this weekend for the Junior Day, and then, dude, after that, believe it or not, we'll be talking about spring practice. So time flies; it never really ends. And we'll have to get Colin Taylor in here on our podcast at some point to talk some Carolina baseball, because baseball is on the horizon. I'm a huge baseball fan too, so I'm excited for baseball to be back here shortly. It doesn't feel like it outside, but baseball season is on the way. So that's going to do it. He is Chris Clark. I'm Wes Mitchell. This has been another Carolina podcast. Check us out on GamecockCentral.com, and if you're not subscribing already, then subscribe and check us out. We'll be back next time on the another Carolina podcast.